Hello and welcome to this video on inductive argument forms. Remember that inductive arguments are distinguished from deductive arguments because in inductive arguments the conclusion is always a matter of chance or contingency or probability. Whereas with deductive arguments the conclusion, if the argument is well reasoned, must follow given that the premises are true. In inductive arguments the conclusion doesn't necessarily have to follow. It could follow, it might follow. It all depends on chance and or contingency. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a list of different types of inductive arguments. First on our list are predictions. A prediction is an argument in which a conclusion is drawn based on our knowledge of the past. Here's an example. For the last 10 years my boss has never been absent from work, even though I want him to be. Moreover, he always arrives to work before everyone else and leaves after everyone else leaves. Therefore, tomorrow my boss will arrive early before everyone else arrives. Notice that what has happened here is I've made a prediction about what my boss will do, and that prediction is based on my past experiences with my boss. Our next argument is our arguments from analogy. An argument from analogy is structured so that an analogy, which is just a comparison, allows us to conclude something of which we know less or maybe even nothing about based on our knowledge of something that we do know something about or at least have more knowledge of. Here's an example. John's computer is very fast and never crashes. John has a brand new Lenovo IdeaPad laptop. I just purchased a brand new Lenovo IdeaPad laptop just like John's. Therefore, my new Lenovo IdeaPad will not crash and will also be fast. Notice that the conclusion that I've drawn here, that my new Lenovo IdeaPad will not crash and will also be fast, is based on my comparing the one that I will buy with the one that John already has. And I already know something about John's computer, so the knowledge that I'm deriving here, the knowledge that I'm inducing here, is based on my knowledge of John's computer. And also the fact that there's a similarity between the computer that he has and the one that I'm buying. It's the same model. The next type of inductive argument is a generalization. In a generalization, knowledge of a certain sample size is used in order to conclude something about all members of that group or set to which the sample belongs, or the samples belong. Typically a trait or a characteristic is referred to or singled out, and then a conclusion is made that all members of that group have that specific trait or characteristic. Here's an example. As a birthday present, John gave me this brown burlap sack with 1,000 marbles in it. I have not looked inside the sack but have pulled out 687 marbles one at a time, and that's because I don't have anything better to do. Those 687 marbles that I have pulled out have been red. Thus, it is very probable that all 1,000 marbles are red. My conclusion here is that it is very probable that all 1,000 marbles are red. And it is based on the trait or characteristic that all 687 that I have pulled out are red. So notice that I'm making a generalization about all of them, about all the marbles, based on what I have seen so far, the marbles that I have seen so far. Notice that the conclusion is still a matter of chance and contingency because there could be another maybe 250 marbles that are not red. Again, that's what makes this an inductive argument. And keep in mind that with all these inductive types, there will always be one thing that you can think of that could change the conclusion and make it false. Okay, our next is arguments from authority. Our next argument is arguments from authority. In an argument from authority, a person or perhaps a group of persons are appealed to as sources of knowledge or experts on a certain topic or subject matter. The conclusion is taken to be true based on the fact that the authorities know what they are talking about. In other words, the conclusion is drawn based on this idea that the authorities have a specific expertise or knowledge about the subject matter. Here's an example. The famous astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson thinks that wormholes and black holes are real. Neil deGrasse Tyson has a doctorate in astrophysics from Columbia University. Therefore, it is very likely the case that wormholes and black holes exist. So notice that the conclusion here has been drawn based on the knowledge or the expertise that Neil deGrasse Tyson has. Our next inductive argument is argument based on signs. In an argument based on signs, a sign, which is intentionally made by a person or groups of people, is used to conclude something based on what the sign indicates or symbolizes. Here's an example. The sign that we just passed on this freeway says that Fresno is 400 miles from where we are right now. These signs are usually accurate. Thus, more than likely, Fresno is 400 miles from here. So notice that the conclusion has been drawn based on the fact that that's what the sign indicates. Also notice that the sign was intentionally done by state workers or something like that to give us that kind of indication. It is important to understand that these signs do have to have been made by human beings, purposely making them to communicate certain things. Our last type of argument is causal inference. Causal inferences are arguments which are based on the idea of cause and effect. Cause and effect is something that we encounter in our everyday life. We know that certain things cause others to occur. Those are the effects. And we know that when we have certain effects, they are because something caused them to be. Here's the definition. In a causal inference, the connection between cause and effect is used in order to induce a conclusion. The conclusion may be about the cause of something if the effect is given, or it can be about the effect of something if the cause is given. And I'll go ahead and give examples of both. Here's an example from effect to cause. I have been stuck inside the house all day and have not even opened a window due to all the work that I have. I see that you're coming home all wet and carrying an umbrella. I can't help but to conclude that it is raining outside. So notice here that the conclusion that it is raining outside, it is due to the effect that I am seeing, and that's the person being all wet and carrying an umbrella. Again, notice that this is inductive. That means that the conclusion could very well be false. Perhaps the person was running around in the sprinklers and thought it was funny to have an umbrella as they ran around and got all wet. So again, remember, there is always that possibility that the conclusion can be false, and that is exactly why these arguments are arguments based on chance or contingency. Our next example is an example in which we have a cause and we conclude or induce an effect. The slice of bread has been in the toaster for 20 minutes now, and the toaster is on high heat. Go get the slice of bread out of the toaster. The bread is surely all burnt by now. The conclusion here, by the way, is that the bread is surely all burnt by now. Notice that that conclusion is drawn by a very straightforward, clear cause, or my knowledge of that cause, which is that the slice of bread has been in the toaster for 20 minutes and the toaster is on high heat. And we know that when we have that kind of cause, the effect is usually that the slice of bread will be burnt. Okay, that is it for this video on inductive argument forms or inductive argument types. We have now covered all inductive forms and all inductive types that are covered in our textbook. Our next couple of videos are going to focus on what makes inductive and deductive arguments good. Basically, we're going to talk about the value of inductive arguments, meaning when are they good and when are they bad, whereas as of now we've just been describing them and describing the